Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the first features panel of the 18th annual Bend Film Festival. It is such a pleasure to have everyone here and have all these wonderful directors here and to present and celebrate this program, the First Features program, which is now in its fifth year, I believe, with Bend Film and getting better every year. And I love that this program exists. Before I get on and talking a little bit more about the program, I want to introduce you to these wonderful and very talented directors we have with us. Um, we have Melissa Fitzsimmons, who's the director of Everything in the End. Hello, Melissa. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
And Melissa has been a finalist for various film programs and grants, including the great and late great Lynn Shelton of a Certain Age Grant, HBO Directing Fellowship, and a two-time Screencraft short film finalist and Screencraft finalist for her short story writing. She's the co-founder of the Los Angeles Women's Film Collective and has worked as a producer on many shorts and as an EP of the feature film A Black Rift Begins to Yawn, which won at Slamdance just this year. And everything in the End is her feature debut. Next, we have Hazard, director of A Hard Problem. The filmmaking duo Hazard has been collaborating since '02. Based in LA, the pair spent a decade working in the production of features, TV shows, and commercials. And after being mentored by talented artists and craftspeople, in 2013, Hazard shifted their focus from physical production to creating their own work, directing 5 shorts and a series of fine art photography. And A Hard Problem also marks their feature debut. Next, we have Kaveh Nabatian. Give a little wave, Kaveh. There you go. Director of Cine La Habana. Kaveh Nabatian has spent the last decade directing and shooting narratives, videos, TV series, and feature-length docs all over the world. He's a musician by trade, and he also makes music for film, dance, various ensembles, orchestra, and theater. And he has taught filmmaking at the Cine Institute in Haiti, where he continues to work and develop projects with Haitian filmmakers and writers, as well as the Algonquin community of Kitigan Zibi, an IFP Narrative Lab Fellow and alumnus of TIFF Writer Studio, TIFF Talent Lab, and TIFF Pitch, as well as the Berlinale Talent Campus. And he aspires to make films that have the immediacy of music and to make music that has the evocative energy of film. And that he does if you've seen his wonderful film. And last but certainly not least, Brad Bischoff, director of Grasshoppers. Brad was recently named one of Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film. And he is an award-winning director whose work has been staff-picked by The Atlantic, Vimeo Short of the Week, YouTube, and screened throughout film festivals all over this world. He's a proud father of 2, an Australian Shepherd, and a flock of chickens living right there in Ventura County. And his notable work includes campaigns for Oscar Mayer, Michelob, as well as Kool-Aid. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for making your films first and foremost, and then sharing it with our audience, who hopefully is tuning in from all over the world. Last year we had, I think, people tuning in from like 37 countries, almost every state, and hopefully we get the same broad exposure this year too, so that your wonderful work does make it all around the country. I mean the world, actually. So first features. This is something that, so I've been here since 2014. And this has been a program that I wanted to do immediately when I got here, and I think it really came to fruition in 2016 when we had John Sayles here being our first features presenter. John was, I'm a former filmmaker, and John was always a hero of mine, and I just love the stories of first features, and I've always been obsessed with stories of first features. And it was mostly the romantic notion, that you make a first feature, it blows people away, and then you're on the road to success. Um, but if you look at the first features of now famous directors, oftentimes you'll see that they had a singular voice that had been lacking in mainstream cinema. And for us too, lacking in mainstream and or even in the independent realm. I think when I think of these stories, I think of Cassavetes, Charles Burnett, Kelly Reichardt, Todd Haynes, just to name a small number of breakthrough filmmakers who did just that, made a first feature that people saw and said, "Whoa, this here is a new voice. This is someone to pay attention to." Um, and not only do these filmmakers show talent, they fit something that wasn't being done. They were people of their time, and they packaged it all together. So the interesting thing is, like, what I always want to talk about is why them, or we'll get into why you. Is it an original story idea that was just too good, that you had never seen before? Is it your life experience that is not seen elsewhere, is too underrepresented? Is it a sensibility or attitude that you feel no other directors have? Or is it technical innovation that will push the art form forward, in marry story with function, and hopefully package all three of technology, story, um, and performance? And since we as a festival work so hard to celebrate new work and new voices, and all of you are definitely notable filmmakers, I'd love to hear from each of you your story. You know, essentially why this film, and also why you. Is that a good lead-in for some interesting discussions?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so that was long, but hopefully that'll lead to some interesting conversation. Anyone want to start? Or should I call on? Okay, I'll call on you, Hazard. Hazard. I'm sorry, Hazard.
Why us? Well, I think because we could. We were able to pull everything together. We've been wanting to make movies since forever, I think, both of us. And, the feature film format's our favorite sort of version of expression. And so, yeah, that's why
I mean, the less romantic answer, though, to that effect is that we had been trying unsuccessfully for a few years to get other projects off the ground, and they kept just like dying in like development hell, or just never quite passing the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And so we eventually were able to find a story that we liked, that we felt like could be done in a fairly contained way on a low budget, and then we're able to like marshal the resources together based on our work in the industry, and so and the connections we had, and so that's also the other side of it, is that like to some degree we had tried and failed to pass through more traditional doorways, and then had to sort of like readjust and find another way in. So
yeah, I mean, that's definitely often the case, where you've had perhaps other ideas and this one being the more practical. But I will say, like, your film has a strong voice, right? It comes from a particular perspective, or, let's just say philosophically, and potentially even, let's say, technically, as a filmmaker, in just comparison to other films in the festival, like, your film is different than Bradley's, and Melissa's for sure. Well, not necessarily with Melissa. There's some similarities there, but let's just say it's with a sci-fi element. Is that something that you guys in particular have been always interested in working on, and perhaps are these other movies that didn't quite make it also have these some science fiction elements and some technology, film, like say new film technology, or more technology than a more naturalistic film, and then this one
Uh,
being most simple and practical that could actually happen.
I mean, our aesthetic is definitely a little bit more sort of technically rigid, I think, than um, other styles of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think no matter what story we would tell, we would sort of have a sort of tone and technical approach to how we want to shoot a scene or a movie or whatever, um, which I think is true, I would imagine, of all filmmakers. But
Mm-hmm.
genre-wise, I think our favorite filmmakers tend to move between genres, and so this is the only sci-fi thing I
Yeah.
think that we've ever written, and the other projects that are in different sort of stages of undress, none of them are sci-fi, but
Mm.
exploring sort of ideas and philosophy and like,
Yeah.
I think that is something that we're very interested in, finding ways to sort of explore universal ideas in a more like sort of hidden in a story that maybe you wouldn't expect it in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should go back to like one of my one of the best first feature stories, let's say in the last 20 years, is obviously Shane Carruth with Primer. And I wonder if that had, because when I was making my first feature, I definitely, that only happened a couple of years before I really went to do it, and heavily influenced the way I went about the production, even though it's a totally different story. But for you, talking about both the practicality, something you could do, something you could afford, and had sort of you wanted to show some technical, um, stylistic prowess as well as philosophical. So curious if you had thought about that at all.
I mean, really, no, like our whole approach to making the first feature was writing a script we knew we could produce in the way that we wanted. And so, every movie has constraints in some way or another. And we just wanted to make sure that our constraints didn't push us too far into a space where we didn't think we were delivering what we wanted to. So I mean, I don't think we definitely did not make, and you can talk to our salespeople, but like we didn't like aim to like have this go and be this thing that everyone would find accessible. Um, we just sort of had the ability, like we were able to pull the pieces together, and we knew we could execute what we wanted
Mm.
in the constraints of sort of the budget, the time, and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But yeah.
Cool. Melissa, how about you?
I wish I had a romantic answer as well.
It's almost better not to, because I bet you that's the more reality of first features than
The
anything
romance
else.
comes later when you're already successful and you look
Exactly.
back and then you make
Right.
it romantic, but it's actually
Exactly.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, I think any one of those that I mentioned will tell you the same thing, right? Sales or Kelly or whoever else. Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I feel like why me and why now and why this film kind of really stems because it was time. It was time for me to make a feature to kind of move forward. I had done so many shorts, and my background is documentary, and so I'd done so many documentaries, and and so I was like, I kind of need to move forward, and and making that first feature was like the next step. And one of the reasons I made it was because everyone told me I couldn't. And so I kind of wanted to prove to myself that I could. And I wanted to kind of, you know, nothing fuels creativity like revenge. And so I feel like now I can go to all those people who said that I shouldn't do it or I couldn't do it and say, well, I kind of did do it. So how do you feel about that? But
Nice.
so, yeah. And so I am kind of the same way where I like directors who kind of cross all genres as well. I mean, all my short films are different kind of genres, but when it came to making this film, I knew that it was going to be a micro budget film, and that's really being generous by calling it that. And I knew that I was going to have to do something that realistically that I could do. And so when I sat down to write it, it was very much with the idea that I would have no money, but I could still do it. And so it's a very isolating film for that reason, because I didn't know where or how it could be done at the time. And so I knew what I wanted to do, which was, I'm not very a plot driven person. I'm emotional driven. So I knew that I wanted to make an emotional film, because those are the types of films that I'm drawn to. I like to leave a movie like feeling depressed and crying. And so I kind of wanted to do that to other people, where maybe that they would, have it something to think about for a few days, and then the film would hit them in a different way. And so I hope I've succeeded in doing that. So that's how this film kind of came about, and the idea of what it was going to be. And then honestly, I just found 4 really talented friends that I had worked with before. And I said, would you like to make a movie with me for no money in Iceland in 9 days? And they all said, yeah. So I was really lucky that I have super talented friends, because really without them, this wouldn't have happened. Obviously, to go and convince people to make a movie in 9 days is kind of foolish on my part, but they said I couldn't do it, and I did. So there.
Right. Well, I will say the only thing that you didn't accomplish is making everyone depressed by the end of it.
I know. I thought I was depressed when I made it. So it is, for a film about dying and grief, is a very hopeful film, it turned out. And I think the reason why is because we did this film pre-pandemic, and we edited it during lockdown. And I think what was happening in the world really informed that edit. And I think it started to make us look at the film in a different way, and that maybe, what we were trying to say about human connections, we were all experiencing at the time, and really craving and needing. And I think that came through in the edit, and it just kind of shaped the film differently. So it's very lovely.
It's really great to hear that this, let's say the story was conceived obviously and definitely shot before the pandemic, so it was obviously conceived before, but something that really fits the time, which is another interesting phenomena, I think, with first features, is that there's a little premonition part of it too sometimes.
I mean, it's pandemic, yes.
It's a pandemic story. Thank you. I wish people listened to you a little bit more.
I mean, I really did. I kind of made a film where everyone was really bored walking around and waiting to touch people. So I feel like that's what happened. So
But then, I mean, to your credit, the pandemic, could have been predicted, and people were doing it, that there is something gonna happen, and it's gonna force people to be separated, and like it just may be a continuation of what's happening on social media, but in a more physical sense than emotional and mental. But you seeing that's going around and translating, and then all of a sudden it really comes to fruition when it becomes this physical inability to connect physically. So well done.
Thank you.
Very, very good job. I'm gonna keep you on afterward for stock tips, since you can so very well predict the future. You do such a good job.
I don't know about that, but
Brad, how about you? Why you, and why this film? Was there anything missing that you felt your voice was not represented maybe in film? Or is it lesser than that? Was there any, was it not as self-conscious or conscious
Well,
decision process?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, sort of right near where John Hughes filmed all his movies. So this sort of picture perfect-esque landscape. But I feel like I sort of had I was inspired by people like Spike Jonze, who would go out. They were just skateboarders at first, and then started making skate videos and capturing the moment of what they were doing. And I remember what my older brother is an artist, and I remember him coming home with Darren Aronofsky's Pi, Akira, like you said, Primer, Buffalo 66, and I mean, just all kinds of films that I wouldn't normally see. You know, my brother was always sort of like, hey, check this out. You should watch this. Then at the same time, I was also watching like Shawshank Redemption and, you know, like big Hollywood movies. And I loved that too. And then my mom had this sort of like romantic, you know, love of film. And this image I'll never get out of my mind is this VHS copy of The Swimmer from the 1960s with Burt Lancaster. And I just was blown away by how that movie ended, of just like this man in a swimsuit knocking on a locked door crying. And it's just like zooming out. And I'm just waiting for the next scene. I'm like, it can't end like that. Like and it just never left me. I mean, I must have been like 13. And so then I just started, I always wanted to make art. At first I thought I wanted to be a painter. And I had almost gone to college for painting. But within painting and photography, I always admired people like Edward Hopper and Francis Bacon, Norman Rockwell, and then Gregory Crewdson's photography. I just started to see a link between all of these things about these portraits of people, and from an outsider perspective, just seeing unfiltered glimpses at people's lives, be it good or bad, indifferent, complex, and even I'm a big fan, and writing as well. And I was a big fan of Bukowski for some time, and he had this line that says, "Born into this, dying because of this." And I that always stuck with me too. And so the Buddhist thought, we are the cause of our own suffering. And so when I started making skate videos, that was just me as a creative person wanting to capture what I was doing and share it, and just share this. I want to share this. And the older I got, when I started to sort of piece together, okay, painting, music, writing, and I had done a play at school, acting, and you know, I should try to make a movie. I should make a short film. And of course, the short film, much like there's this inherent creativity in me wanting to share my personal perspective, my short film started to be that as well. So, you know, one of my first short films was about like infatuation and love, and you know, it's very imaginative and Michel Gondry inspired, and I just kept going from there. And every film led to the next film. I started doing one a year. I went to film school, and then I started to find, the older I got, the whimsical, imaginative style started to kind of go away, and I started to be inspired by Sean Durkin and Antonio Campos, and you know, Marcy May Marlene, and you know, Simon Killer. And I just started to see a sort of different perspective, and wanting to try that in a narrative way, with this film I did with my brother and I, and blurred the lines of documentary and narrative. And so we're both acting in it. It takes place in the suburbs the night before I move out to the city. And it was just sort of a very cathartic production experience, and something that I was really inspired by. And then as I started, I kept wanting, at first I thought that was going to be my first feature. There was a lot that I wanted to explore in the suburbs and in Midwestern culture, and sweeping emotions under the rug. But then after I did that short film, I just found that I kind of already said what I wanted to say. And so I never wanted to make a feature just to make it. And so then from there, I had to, as badly as I wanted to make a feature, I couldn't bring myself to jump into and give everything to something that, you know, I felt like I already said it. So the feature has to be different. And, you know, a few more years went by, a few more short films went by, and each one sort of a portrait of a different person in a different sort of atmosphere. When I was becoming a dad, I did a portrait on, an opera singer who's becoming a mom, and she suddenly can't sing anymore. She's taking care of her kids all day. So there's always this reflection. It's not quite me, but it's a version of me. And then so when I wrote Grasshoppers, I wanted to go back to the romance. I kept being inspired by things like The Swimmer and Days of Wine and Roses and orchestral scores, and a couple just sort of falling in and out of love while trying to, believe in this American dream of having a house and a yard and kids and building a family. And I wrote it at the time when, we were about to have our second baby, and finding myself burdened by, bills and the realities of life while trying to be an artist, and obviously going through some tough times in the personal relationship as well. And so I feel like all of that got infused into this story that I hope tried to show the complexities of love. That one of my first art teachers told me, Jordy Field, and he said there's a difference between being naked and being nude. And when you're naked, you're sort of exposed and people know you're looking at you, and your clothes are off. But when somebody's nude, that it's this unfiltered glimpse at somebody's being, and they're unaware that they're being watched. And so I sort of always wanted my films to feel like you're getting the chance of seeing somebody nude, if that makes sense metaphorically. And anyway, that's where Grasshoppers came from, and how I guess I found myself getting into film.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty interesting too when you initially rattled off the films that your brother was bringing home. There are a lot of notable first features in there, which is, I think, a pretty common story, in that here's something,
I forgot to mention Christopher Nolan's The Following too. That was
right. The Following, yeah, totally, yeah, I know. All of these things, in some of them, remain their best films, And I would say, we could talk about the filmmaking ability of Kevin Smith, but there's Clerks is one of the best first feature stories out there too. But in my opinion, it's still his best film. So it's pretty fascinating to see that, but it's also like, if you do have a good one, a good one from the get-go can sustain a career, even if
right.
the subsequent ones, especially the sophomore efforts, don't quite work out.
I think one other note on that, there's this book, there's these two brothers, Logan and Noah Miller, who made this film with Ed Harris, and the book is called You're Either In or You're in the Way. And it was their first feature, and their father passed away, and on his deathbed, they were like, they'd always been talking about making a feature. And then they were like, this is the year we're going to do it. And that was a promise they made to their dad.
Nice.
From nothing. And this book was a huge inspiration for me. And within that year, going from completely outside of filmmaking, outside of the system, outside of everything, to making their first feature with like this incredible actor. And to me, I just felt like where there's a will, there's a way. And I believe that beyond film, if there's something you want to do, you just go do it. You just go make it happen. And then the universe starts listening and everything starts falling into place. But it starts with you.
What was the name of that movie?
I can't remember the name of
it. Was it like something that was like helped discover Ed Harris, or was he already?
No, they rushed him at like a Q&A at a film festival. So he's already killing it. But he just was so enamored by their energy that he just did it. Awesome. And to take the pressure off of the first one has to be this masterpiece. It's like just go make something beautiful,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Kaveh. Why you and why this film?
Well, I was spending a lot of time in Cuba, and I was really interested in the relationship that Cubans have with foreigners. And I'm the product of a mixed marriage. Like my dad's from Iran, my mom's from the US. So I've always found those kind of culture clashes interesting. And yeah, it was like just a story that kind of grew in me. And then I was working with this Afro-Cuban guy, Pablo Herrera, who's a hip hop producer actually. And he wanted to make a film that would be an like accurate representation of Afro-Cuban culture because there's very few of those in cinema. And so between that and then also I just, have a lot of there's a lot of images and sounds and kind of atmospheres that I had in my head from spending time there and contrasting it with Montreal, where I mean I live between Montreal and New York, but yeah, so I just kind of chipped away at it for years and years, and I think that because I was interested in it and because I have some kind of musical approach to film that made sense with that story, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, so you've spent a lot of time in Cuba. Is that right? As well as Haiti?
Yeah. I was actually down there writing a different film. And then I knew this hip hop producer through a friend of a friend. And he needed some trumpet on some tracks. And so I came and played with him. And then, it's funny. He was like, I didn't realize what a cinephile culture Cuba is, but it's everywhere in Cuba, and people can go and see movies for like the equivalent of 7 cents.
No kidding.
And so people who get into it just go and see like amazing movies all the time, because especially under the there's like you're showing Tarkovsky movies all the time, so you can just go and watch these like 35 millimeter prints. And but I didn't really realize that. So he was asking like, hey, so what's your favorite recent film? And at the time, In the Mood for Love had just come out. So I said it, but I kind of didn't expect him to know what that was. He was like, oh, well, I prefer Happy Together, but blah, blah, blah. And he went into this whole thing. And then I was like, well, who are some of your favorite filmmakers? He's like, well, I like Peter Greenaway a lot. Okay, so now we're on to a whole other thing than what I thought. And so I was talking about the relationship between foreigners and Cubans and why it is the way it is and so unique and specific. And then he just got excited about it and got really into showing this kind of Afro-Cuban, seeing it through an Afro-Cuban lens. And then I brought the Iranian lens and kind of, it's about cultures mashing up.
Yeah. And, Cuba is definitely high on my list of countries I have to go to. I've been to a lot of Latin American countries and always enamored by each new one I go to. But Cuba obviously being, relatively newly accessible to Americans. And would you say that, prior to whenever, what was it, 2012 or something, where Obama opened it up a little bit more, were people from other countries visiting Cuba? I mean, was there a decent tourist base there from, like non-Americans?
Yeah. I mean, I'm Canadian.
What's that?
I'm Canadian. So I was, I mean, there's not that many Americans still, but yeah, I mean, it is like Cuba runs on Quebecois tourism, like mostly Canadian tourism. That's kind of the main. I think it's something like 40% of the tourists are from Quebec, and then there's some Canadians, and then there's some Europeans. But so there's this very like that's kind of what's interesting is that Americans have been kind of cut out of it. Yeah. And so the way that tourism works is different than in places where it's full of Americans. It has a different vibe, and it kind of caters to different ideas and different people. So there's definitely, I mean, especially after the Soviet Union fell and that Cuba couldn't count on Russia to be paying their bills anymore, they had to develop a tourist industry. So they did.
Yeah, so it kind of gets into the conversation too of what's missing. I mean, I know that there's many more films that I know of, but let's just say the ones that come to mind, obviously, Before Night Falls, and obviously the music one, which is his name is escaping me.
Oh, the Buena Vista Social Club?
Yeah, Buena Vista. Thank you. Jeez. There's obviously great cinema coming out of Cuba about Cuban experience. But, to Americans, I think that embargo exists, artistically. Like you can see more stuff at festivals. but still, like in the mainstream, these movies don't exist. So it was really nice and refreshing to see that on screen, because you don't see it much.
Good. I'm glad.
You-
That was definitely part of the goal, was to show it, especially just to show a different side of Cuba. Because as Vendors with Buena Vista Social Club, he was doing the thing that people do, where they make it look like this utopian island full of like happy Black people who play music on the streets. And it's like there's some elements of that in Cuba, but it's a way more complex society than that, and that doesn't show up in the mainstream. So that was what was so important to me, and especially to Pablo, to put out there and to show the beauty of it, but also the complexities of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done. I mean, that's, representation is a huge, hugely important thing that cinema can do, bringing the world to people. And, we really love that part of it. And I know people, in Bend, Oregon, which is in the smack dab in the center of Oregon, and there's a lot of travelers here, but it's still, relatively isolated. So, having the world brought to people here really helps, get a sense of how other lives, cultures, people in other countries live. Um, so thank you for showing us more in-depth part of other parts of the world.
My pleasure.
Before I move on to the next question, anyone else have anything else they wanted to say on that topic? Okay. The one part of this program that I always liked is, so there would obviously be a much more successful moderator, filmmaker, typically in a typical year. But I'm always fascinated by one, the leap to feature filmmaking, because most filmmakers do start out, doing shorts or something else, or commercials, and then maybe have the dream, but then finally take that leap, that sort of leap of faith into feature filmmaking. And the main difference is feature filmmaking is often a marathon, and an exercise in endurance, as much as it is an artistic pursuit. And one of the purposes of the program is to, we'll have a bunch of shorts filmmakers or people from the community who are interested in filmmaking, and hearing the stories from people who then did take a leap of faith and did put a lot on the line to then finally go ahead and make that leap to feature filmmaking. So in that, what are some of the war stories from making this film? What were the hardest things you had to overcome to enter this world of feature filmmaking? And then, as well as, and this is to end on a more hopeful note, is what are the moments of grace, and why? And hopefully the answer is yes. Of why you are happy that you did take this leap of faith into feature filmmaking. So I think I started on Hazard last time. So let's go to Melissa. We'll start on you this time.
Yay. So like I said earlier, I think I just consistently was doing shorts, and I really wanted to keep moving forward and challenge myself as a filmmaker. And I kept coming up against all these obstacles, being a female filmmaker. Like I would go in to meetings and try to pitch a film, and they would go, well, you've never really done a feature, but we like what you're doing, but come back to us when you have a feature. Or, well, maybe you should go do this shadowing program, or maybe you should go do this lab, or you have to be a writer director. And so all these kind of boxes that apparently I needed to check off before anyone would kind of take me seriously. So I kind of went and did all that, and still everyone was going, well, and I felt like everyone had an excuse to say no to me. And didn't want to give them the option to say no to me anymore. So I just thought about it. I thought about what I wanted to say as a filmmaker and what I wanted to represent as a filmmaker. And so that right there was the I had to be the person that wanted to take the leap of faith. It wasn't anybody else. And so I basically was like, yeah, I'm ready. And I don't really need to prove to anybody but myself that I'm ready. And so when I went in with that kind of mentality and attitude towards making my first feature, it's actually quite easy to make that jump. Obviously, being an indie filmmaker, and being a no-name filmmaker, I haven't gone to film school and I haven't played top tier festivals and I haven't obviously won big awards or prizes. I'm always the finalist for something, but never like the final girl. And so I was completely unknown. I still am completely unknown. No one knows who I am. And so I knew that going in that I was going to just have to have high hopes but low expectations. And I just wanted to make movies with my friends. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I too started with skateboard videos. And so I kind of really enjoy that feeling and that community of when you're with your friends and you're just having fun. So I think going into that, and with any project, I'm always about, it's never about the actual film, it's about the process of making the film. And so as long as I have a good experience with the process of making the film, I'm okay with what happens with the film in the end. And for me, there was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. Like, what if I really hate this process? What if it's super stressful? What if it is a complete failure? And it proves that maybe I don't want to do feature films or I don't want to do filmmaking. But I had such an amazing experience, even with all the obstacles of no money, 9 days, 4 people on a crew in Iceland, you know, with weather the way it was. I loved it. And it kind of just really solidified in me that I did make the right decision. And I did, you know, make the decision to jump like headfirst. And luckily I didn't hit the bottom. So I'm very excited to like kind of move on to the next one now with the same attitude that, you know, either someone's going to want to do something with me or they're not, but that's not going to make me not want to do it because I had such a great experience. And I think, I mean, I hope they say they did. Everybody who was on it with me also had that great experience. And so for me, that meant a lot because that meant that they'll go on to do other stuff as well. And everyone will be able to see how talented they are and hire them and work with them. And hopefully they'll have a good enough experience moving forward as well. And so that's kind of where, you know, what happens for me personally, and how I go into any project is like, you just got to go for it. Sometimes it doesn't work out. I've had many projects that didn't work out that no one's ever seen. So, but I'm very lucky and I'm very fortunate. You know, you're only as good as your cast and your crew, and my cast and crew were really lovely and they trusted me. And so I think the process and the experience of making the film means I did something right. I hope. Ben programmed me, so there you go.
There you go. Celine knows her stuff. You know, I love 2 things that you brought up, you know, first about revenge and then, you know, reading between the lines. And 2 is, you know, seeing what you're capable of and seeing what you can get away with, I think are interesting motivators as well. And, you know, that brings me, that's why I always like the Primer story, because it did seem like kind of an engineering challenge, you know, like if I listened to the DVD track, if I remember, you know, this was whatever, 15 years ago when I listened, but, you know, Shane had these kind of purposefully set constraints. And it seemed to me he was more interested in what he could get away with than, you know, and then more motivated by that than making a great film. And I think that speaks a lot to the process, you know, just like you were saying, because that stuff you have to enjoy if you're going to continue to do this, you know?
Yeah, 100%. If I didn't enjoy doing it, I don't know what I would be sitting here questioning myself, like, why am I even on this panel? So
Yeah. And the easiest, the other interesting thing is if you read other stories about people that have gone on to do bigger things, is that it's no less difficult. There's
No.
parts of it that are less difficult, but then there's added challenges that that money cannot solve, or fame or whatever else. So it's always going to be an enormous pain in the neck, and you got to love it, right?
Yeah, I mean, making movies at any budget there's always obstacles. I mean, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard making movies. Making movies with no money, I don't know. I kind of think money would solve that problem. uh,
Hey,
more money or more time, and
right.
no, you gotta choose one or the other. I didn't have either, but I hope on the next one I have
Yeah.
one of them. So
Well, then again, and like, let's talk about time and money. And what comes to mind is Apocalypse Now. Lots of time, apparently lots of money, or maybe they kept giving him money. It was hard to get it, but everyone had heart attacks on the movie, and Coppola went insane. So I take it you guys may have had some elements of temporary insanity making your movies, but probably not to that degree. But yeah,
But
talking
we
about
didn't make Apocalypse Now either, so yeah.
yet.
Yeah,
Neither did he his first time out.
it's true.
You just have to apparently do like a bunch of coke and just bring everyone together.
Money can.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you need money for that too. So yeah.
there you go. Well, speaking of, I mean, it's a good segue because feature filmmaking is a hard problem. So I do wonder if there is, any even subliminal tongue in cheek there, Hazard, about the hard problem of making a hard problem.
Not on that level, but I mean, we welcome any and all interpretations. Like,
It's been going on in the background. You never know.
yeah, I mean, we certainly set ourselves up for all sorts of, remarks and, sharp tooth reviews, I'm sure. But with a title like that. But I wanted to touch on our experience as well in this industry and the business, to Melissa speaking to that, people giving excuses of what we too have shadowed numerous directors. So, I mean, our background is in television. And so originally we just kind of assumed that's where our path was going to go. We were in, production side of studio TV shows. And so we saw our path of directing in that genre. And then so many people, and I think it's actually worse than people. It's not even people looking for ways to say no. They're just looking for excuses, because actually the thing we crave the most is at least a no. Because most of the time they will bend over backwards to either give you any answer but no, or no answer at all.
Yeah.
And so, some people maybe don't share that sort of like finality, but we just want an answer. We just don't want to be left hanging or given another challenge to chase. So,
yeah, nobody in the room ever wants to say no, but they all want to be the person to take claim when somebody says yes. And I feel the same way. I would rather have a no. Same way with festivals. I don't want to wait. If I could submit and they could just tell me the next day, I'm totally fine with being rejected. I don't care. Just tell me right away. The waiting part is the absolute worst part. So
yeah, I mean, the level, like if there are filmmakers aspiring to make, like, the level of rejection in the film business is like a unique sort of amount, I feel like. And so you have to be really comfortable with that, and then just trying to figure out ways around it. And I think we to sort of bring it back from the beginning, like, we romanticize how people made their way in this business. There's like the Spielberg just walked onto the lot at Universal and opened an office. Well, like, Universal's like out the window that way. And if I walked onto that lot to try to just pick up an office, I'd like be in jail. So it doesn't, like, it's not, there's so much luck required in success, in a business, in an art form that requires so many people to come together to make something happen. I mean, Melissa, you seem to have found a great, like, to make a movie with 4 people, obviously amazingly talented people, is like, to be able to do that is must be so freeing, because you just have 3 other people to like keep your hands on, when a lot of times it requires so many more people, and keeping them all motivated, and trying to, you know, not push people too far or overextend, especially when you're making a low budget thing. Yeah, it's just I think we tell ourselves these like romantic stories to make ourselves, I don't know, because we're storytellers, right? So
Well,
like that's like
it's
part of it.
It's certainly inspiring, but I think if another message I think isn't really communicated enough for people looking to like make a first feature, whatever your background is, whatever experiences you may or may not have, is that, you know, it's motivating and inspiring to talk about the Kevin Smiths of the world or the Shane Carruths, but
Yeah.
those are often the exception, and you can't measure yourself against either their results or even the like, however, the quality of the film or how successful the film was, and whatever measure that is. And you just have to do what you think is possible, because there are plenty of, you know, there are Kevin Smiths we've never heard of who did max out their credit cards and their movie didn't get into Sundance, and they're just left with a lot of debt. So if that's what you can certainly do that, but don't necessarily think that that's a recipe for success. You have to take the risks that you're able to, or leverage, and figure out what it is you think you can get away with, as you were saying, Todd. And so and then I think the other thing is, don't necessarily compare yourself to everyone, because no matter how much they, you know, talk about how limited they were, they still had, when you step back and think about all of the resources and the equipment, and again, this is an art form that it's not like writing where you just need a piece of paper. It's not musical composition where you can do a lot of those things yourself. You need, at a minimum, you know, a good group of people, and they all need to, you know, be very talented and have an understanding and a craft. And so you just have to, you know, try to keep that into perspective, that like, don't be so dissuaded or disillusioned if your thing doesn't look and sound exactly like your favorite indie movie or first feature.
Yep.
A great point, and releasing expectation, you know, I feel that for sure. I was just thinking, I was like, you know, a lot of times I feel like this journey has been like, I'm chasing like these breadcrumbs, and I just keep expecting a loaf of bread to show up, and it's just another crumb. And I'm like, but the crumb is in a new place, and the new place looks cool, so I keep exploring and finding another crumb, and it's just enough to eat. But there is no releasing that expectation, I think, has been a huge thing for me. And you know, I can relate to everything all 3 of you have been saying. Being able to take rejection time and time again, and to still get up and have fun and try to make something cool. Like I just relate to that very much.
Yeah. How about you, Kaveh?
Yeah, I mean, it took me like 10 years to get that film financed. So it was a lot of rejection. And yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think my one regret is that I think in film more than in other art forms, you're always looking towards the future. You're like, I'm going to get my money. I'm going to make my short film, and then I'm going to make my first feature. And then that first feature is going to get into X place. And then that's going to lead to this deal that I'm going to get with somebody. And so sometimes it's easy to not be in the moment with what we're actually doing, you know, because we're like, this isn't good enough, or this isn't what I expected, or this isn't how it's supposed to be. And I definitely suffered from that. Like when my film first was finished, it wasn't getting into festivals. Like now it's picked up steam and it's doing nicely. But it was like once I'd actually finished grieving my expectations, all of a sudden it picked up for me, you know, which was really interesting. Yeah. And so it's like, if you're going to do this crazy art, you have to just like be ready to be kind of kicked around a ton. And every once in a while you get to do something that's purely magical, you know? And when those magical moments happen, you have to be so just in it and open, because that's why we're doing it. And if you're in those magical moments, you're thinking about the next problem, then you miss the whole point of doing this crazy thing, you know. That's my advice to myself 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's the most important part of this conversation, is those moments of grace that only people who have successfully made a first feature have found, especially people that continue to do it, because just like Brad was talking about, those breadcrumbs, you know, that are those moments of grace of like new things, new experiences, you know, even how small or minute are those things that go, wow, that would have never happened if I didn't do this. This was magic.
This might be a slight tangent, but on that, I've always had this belief that like if you speak something and put it out into the universe, you know, it's either out there for you to go chase it now, or what you put out there someone else is going to tap into, and it's just going to get done regardless because you spoke it out there. And to me, it's always been about the chase, even outside of film. It's like when I was building a life for myself outside of my parents' house, and starting in the city of Chicago, and you know, the first thing I needed was a job just to get some regular income. And so I just walked through the entire downtown of Chicago and said to myself, I'm going to walk into every single restaurant until somebody gives me a job. I'm just going to do that. Yeah. And so for 2 days, I just walked into restaurant after restaurant after restaurant. And on the second day, somebody said, do you have any serving experience? I said, no, but give me a menu. I'll have it memorized and I'll be here. Let's do it. And I got a job. And to me, that same mentality I carry with me in filmmaking, where after all these short films, and I eventually landed on the script that I believed in and a film I wanted to make, that I could have that mentality, because if you believe in it, it's so much easier to do that stuff. If you don't believe in it and the crew doesn't believe in it, it's just not gonna, or it will be subpar, it'll be a drain. But I just launched a Kickstarter, you know, and just on that day, we got 45 days to get this money. Let's do it by any means necessary. And then that became like a full-time job. And that was just another one of the breadcrumbs, because then you think after the Kickstarter, cool, we're going to go into production. We didn't shoot for 5 more years, you know, and doing test shoots and realizing that the chemistry between actors isn't working, and knowing, you know, if this is your baby, you got to raise it right, and knowing when to give it time and space. But it's just that mentality I wanted to infuse into this conversation, is just that belief that it's, you know, if you believe it'll happen. It might not be what you thought it would be, but that comes with releasing the expectation.
I mean, going along with that, how has this exceeded your expectations? You know, like that's when I say the moments of grace. Like you could plan all day, you know, for a movie, but you know, when you have crews and cast and all these other things that you can't control as much as you'd like to, what are those moments of grace that go, wow, that was better than I had anticipated? Because you put it out there and you saw what happened, you rolled the dice, and whoa, that was better than I thought. Does anyone have any stories of that occurred during you?
I mean, during filming or after filming?
During, after, you know, in the process, that sort of thing. Like, because again, you know, like you set these challenges for yourself, like Brad was talking, you get these, you know, these goals. I can do this. I can walk downtown and get a job. You know, I'm going to do this. So you're sort of challenging yourself, and you have these goals, and then all of a sudden, whoa. So maybe, you know, that restaurant wasn't some bar bread, but, you know, whatever Shea Paul in like Lincoln Park. You know, oh, I just had this one little goal, but holy, wow, I got one of the best restaurants in Chicago. You know, so have there been like similar stories of that?
I mean, to get a hard problem off the ground, once we had majority of the financing in place, we had to find a house and a tax incentive friendly place to shoot. So we went on like a American tour of tax incentive states. And so we went to Portland, we went to Cincinnati. And again, I think the thing that we hammer on a lot is like sort of the serendipity and the luck of this whole thing. We were at a friend's press screening of a feature she had made. And we met this publicist who we told we were looking for places to shoot. And she said, well, have you ever thought of Knoxville, Tennessee? And we said, no, for nothing ever. And she was like, well, I'm from there. I've done some work there. Would you be willing to like go? And so we drove from Cincinnati, where we were given access to a Frank Lloyd Wright property. That was amazing, but his houses are so tiny that it's impossible to shoot in without blowing out walls. And we drove down to Knoxville, and they treated us like we were some big movie coming to town. They helped us scout locations. We found a place to shoot. We lost that place and subsequently got another place after another scout, but that's a totally different story. And we were able to, we brought a lot of people out from LA, a bunch of the key crew, and then filled out the crew with people from all over Tennessee and sort of the Eastern Seaboard. And like going to a place we never knew, we had no intention of ever going there, with people we were, just starting to collaborate with in many cases. It all turned out to be like summer camp. Everybody is very close. And it was cast we'd never worked with before. And I think initially they were both also nervous about coming to Knoxville, Tennessee for, we shot for 24 days on the ground there. So it's like a month of time for them. And yeah, so all of that, we were nervous about, but ended up really working out. And if you create an environment that people feel comfortable in and that they feel appreciated in, and, I think it winds up being a fun experience. And yeah, shooting the movie was incredibly fun. There were some hard days and nights and a sunrise and stuff like that, but that's just normal. That's going to be anywhere.
I am one of the reasons that I chose to shoot in Iceland was I was doing this movie about like the kindness of strangers, and my experiences in Iceland had always kind of really been that. Like everybody in Iceland is incredibly kind, and they're very calming, and they're lovely. And so shooting in Iceland, I knew was going to be a challenge. And everyone's like, why would you choose to shoot your first feature in Iceland? Like, that's so expensive. It's incredibly expensive there. And I just am so stubborn that way, which is like an issue I have, stubborn and like impatient. From start to finish, I didn't even have a full script until like 2 weeks before shooting. And so, one of like this kind of blessings in disguise, I guess, was, okay, so first of all, we had thought, well, we're going to do this film in Iceland because we can fly very cheaply to Iceland. And so I had bought these tickets on WOW Air, which were like $100 each. And so it was like, of course we can shoot in Iceland. They went bankrupt like right before. And so then we had to fly like a real airline. And then that real airline, upon arrival, lost all of our luggage and like camera stuff. We were smart enough to bring our camera on the plane with us and the lenses, but all the other gear and our luggage were gone. So when we landed, I said, surely this is a bad sign that I have made the wrong decision to shoot in Iceland. And we went up to the little kiosk and we said, excuse us, how do you lose 11 pieces of luggage? And they were so calm and kind and reassuring to us that within like 5 minutes, we were like, that's fine. Sure, we're supposed to shoot in a couple hours, but we're just going to wait and tomorrow, I guess. And the way that like the calmness of everything came over us. And it was like a kind of like a funny little moment. It turned into like what was super going to be this like horrible experience to start out making a movie, turned into like this beautiful, like, oh, we're here and we're making it and it'll get done. And these people are so welcoming and they're giving us toothbrushes and stuff like that. And so I kind of had already gone into every project having the lowest of expectations. And so every step of the way with every obstacle and every way that it was solved, the expectations kind of grew higher and higher, because so by the end of it, I ended up having like such a great experience that my expectations for the film, I started to like daydream a little bit about how there, what could happen. That immediately goes away with the two first rejections of the films, and I went completely back down to the lowest expectations. But what's been really wonderful is I, in my mind was like, if I can get this film into 5 festivals, I have succeeded. That is, 5 festivals with, hopefully like 6 people in the audience, maybe 2 of them are not filmmakers at the festival. And then that's how I always gauge everything. If there's 6 people that watch my movie, that's 6 sets of eyes that hadn't seen it before. And I'm very happy with that. This film for me, and it could be because it's a virtual world and maybe festivals are accepting more. It's exceeded that kind of, I only need to get into 5 festivals to feel like this is a success, because I'm going on to my 30th festival.
Nice.
And all my short films combined have never even been in that many festivals. So I feel like I'm probably peaking. Like, this is going to be my peak. This is 30 festivals, and for a film, no one's like, that's it, I'm done, So I'm feeling incredibly grateful and humbled, and the whole experience of like having to do festivals during this time it's been such a huge disconnect for me. Like, I don't know how people are reacting to the movie. I don't know who likes it, who doesn't like it. I don't know what people take away from it. I don't know how many people are watching. I don't have the opportunities that you get when you go to festivals in person. I didn't actually think I would miss festivals this much. Like, you go to festivals and after like the 4th one, you're like, I don't really want to smile anymore at anyone. I just want to like go watch a movie and go back to my hotel. And I didn't think I would miss my free Tito's vodka, but I actually incredibly miss filmmakers, like meeting other filmmakers, because it's the only time that I can really talk about film is with other filmmakers, because I have filmmaker friends, but I have a group of friends that aren't filmmakers, and they're like, can you stop? It's so boring. We don't care, but other filmmakers, there's that really beautiful like passion that they have, and just when we're all sitting around, and I miss that immensely. And so that's kind of like the only thing that I'm getting from these festivals are these moments right here, where I can actually like see faces of other filmmakers and watch their films and like shout out to everybody how great they are, because that's all I'm getting right now from festivals, is the opportunity to see movies that I if you're at a festival you might not see because they conflict with other screenings. And so it's been a crazy wild ride, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm not enjoying it, if that makes sense. Like, I want to like poke people and touch them and hear music live, but we do what we do. Next year.
It's been one of the hardest things, because that is one thing that I think makes our festival great and every festival that I've played at is pretty much been similar too, in that audience interaction. Something could happen with your next project or your current project that gets you down, and you see a few people really appreciating what you did is amazingly uplifting.
Yeah.
And to finally talk to a room full of people who know exactly what you've been through is extremely cathartic. So that's been the toughest thing about COVID, is to not be able to provide those opportunities, because I think we do everything we can to create atmospheres for those interactions, both so that the audience, so that filmmakers hear directly from the audience about how their work in particular affected them, and then to meeting other filmmakers that may just love your work and say that, which tell you that, which is helpful, but perhaps even more so, want to collaborate with you too. which is always great. There's been so many stories over the years. So, yeah, I mean, that's another testament to y'all too. During the these last 2 years, to be a filmmaker, it has been tough. There's no question about it.
I just have to make another movie so that I can go to Bend next time.
Exactly. All you need to come here. My God.
This time I'll have 6 people on my crew.
How about you, Kev? You're I think the only representative here, so everyone has relatively contained, um, um, let's just say, production, whereas you're in multiple countries and cities, and what are some of your war stories or moments of grace?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of both, I guess. The Cuban government revoked our permit to shoot 2 months before we were supposed to start, so that was a total nightmare. And no one would tell us why, so we had to get somebody there to like knock on just a million doors until we got to the Minister of Culture, who told us what the problem with the script was. I had to change like one line, and then they gave it back to us a week before, maybe 2 weeks before shooting. So we were like in the middle of trying to see if we could do it in the Dominican Republic, but I really didn't want to, and just like, and so you can just imagine, like, after all these years of working on this, it felt like it was all just falling away from me. And then, yeah, and then I was working with all non-actors, and the acting when we were in rehearsal wasn't super strong, so I was terrified then. And then they ended up being amazing. But then there's also just like lots of moments of like, I chose to work with a ballet dancer who's actually one of the best ballet dancers in the world, rather than getting an actor who I would teach ballet. And so there are these moments where sometimes I'd be shooting with a Bolex because I wanted to have these 60 millimeter kind of textural elements to the film. And it'd just be me and Yona, like me following him around and kind of dancing with him. And it was like, I knew it was going to be fun to do that. But when we're in those moments, it was like, just, you couldn't worry about anything else. You're just so alive. It's just, the moment was happening. And then the crazy thing, of course, is since it's on 16, it's like we wouldn't find out until we got back from Cuba if I'd gotten it or not.
Yeah.
So then that was another little moment of grace when we got the footage back, and it was like so vibey and alive. It was like super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And another really amazing moment was the woman who plays one of the characters' grandmothers has a small role. She's quite a famous actress in Cuba. She's like in her 80s, and I'd heard that she was a really good singer, and so we did one shot where she's chopping onions. I was like, just sing anything you like. And so she sang this song, and I mean, the melody is so beautiful, but also the words, which I hadn't, wasn't written into the script or anything, but the words are, don't ask me why I'm sad, because I'll never tell you. You shared the good moments with me, but not the bad. Why would you? And it just kind of like summed up the energy of the film so perfectly, and the melody was so beautiful, and just like, what is happening? It was like everything just, it was just right there. And then that melody ended up turning into kind of the melodic structure for the entire film, and it comes back, and there's like a house music song in the background with that melody, and then there's this like granular synthesis stuff, and then there's all these different kind of ways of approaching that piece of music. And it was all just because, I mean, I'll take credit for like always having space for magical moments like that to happen, but I couldn't imagine it would be that awesome. So that was really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, to Bradley's earlier point, I don't think you can discount the the inertia that you unleash. Once you start this, you never know what's going to happen, and good things, you put yourself out there, and it seems, for everyone here, good things just happen, and people pick up on whatever that energy is that you had, or these ideas, and run with it. It's very fascinating, I think, about how this all works, the magic of sort of collaboration and this art form in particular. How about you, Bradley? You have some interesting stories about your production, right? About how that came to be.
Yeah, I think to stick on the locations theme, I guess I'll start there and just share a few. But when I had been location scouting for this film, a friend had introduced me to this realtor, Lori Rowe, and she took me to Barrington, which oddly enough is where I was born. I grew up in a different suburb and hadn't really spent much time in Barrington. So to go back to my birthplace, I thought was really interesting right away. And she took me into this community called Windstone, where it's just all these houses just surrounding this private golf course. And as soon as we sort of drove in through this, nice curved drive through the town, I just immediately started seeing the whole film. And like in the film, all these houses a lot of them are owned, and owners live elsewhere, so a lot of them were empty, and it was just a matter of sort of meeting and speaking to the people who lived both in Windstone and then a few houses outside of Windstone, that I was completely humbled by. Everybody was so nice, loving, and let us sleep in their houses, and we ate all of our meals together, and it was just one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had on a set. And I give credit to the people of Barrington for making that happen. Another one of those stories, when I do rehearsals, I like to sort of just go out into public places, real places, and it's not so much about the text, it's like actors they have the script, they have that, and they can work on that in their own time. But then when we get together, I like to sort of go out and just create some natural chemistry, and just I'll be there and I'll sort of write down a little subject line, I'll hand it to them, and then I'll go off and we'll be at a bar and just sort of watch them interact from afar and come in close and hear how it's going. Anyway, we had lost our bar location about 2 days before we started, that we needed to film there. And so we went just driving through this town and stopped at this random corner, sort of bowling alley bar called Kingpin Lanes. And again, as soon as we walked in, it was so cinematic. There's nothing that you needed to do to the space. It was ready to shoot. It just looked so gorgeous. But so anyway, we just ordered a round of beers, and it was our day off. We had been shooting already for 2 weeks, and it's just me, Saleh, and Eva, and we're talking, and I put a song on the jukebox. There's like 3 regulars there that have probably been there since noon, maybe earlier. And the owner was the bartender, and he comes up and it's just, he's like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, it looks like you're acting, So we were all like playing on the floor. And anyway, we told him what we were doing, and I just saw that as a moment to be not even asking, but like, hey, yeah, we're looking for a spot. We just lost our location. And he said, you guys let me know when you need to shoot. You can come here whenever you want. I'll close the bar, and you could just do what you need to do. I mean, it was just the most, incredible experience. And so we did. We shot there. And then 2 weeks later, when we wrapped the film, he hosted a wrap party for us. And there must have been 30 people who came, and I went to go pay the tab at the end, and he just said, it's on me. I'm like, it was amazing.
Wow.
And then I guess the one more that I'll share is just the collaboration with the cinematographer Daphne Wu. She came on late into the project pretty quickly before we started filming. And so we didn't really know each other. I mean, the producers are my friends, Justin Nijam and Lisa Rudin, gave me a short list of cinematographers to look at, because we had someone who I had been planning to shoot it with for a very long time ended up not working out. So I had about a week and a half, 2 weeks to be, look through this list, and Daphne was like the first name, and I looked at it, watched her stuff, and it just blew me away. We jumped on a phone call. We're already there in Chicago, ready to shoot, about a week and a half away from production, and she flew in, and we just had a week to prep, get to know each other, walk through all the locations together. And I mean, if I had known that that's what it was going to be like going in, I would have been like, this is madness. This is crazy. Like, not only to collaborate with someone new, but like the cinematographer, like, it all starts with the cohesive vision to make sure that you're on the same page. And I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I mean, she brought so much genius to the film, and intention with our frames, and we just had this overarching idea. I mean, you know, I've been working on it for 7 years, so there was this concept, and then once I sort of, you know, I'm working with this new beautiful person, we sort of can break that down and then be spontaneous a little bit, knowing that, okay, here's the idea, and then every day was like a play. Every day was like you know, like almost like an open mic night. Like we're gonna show up and just play some music, and it worked. The collaboration worked, and I'm just so grateful for it. That was a huge silver lining for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, along with this inertia, it is, you know, it's the energy that you guys have put out that absolutely is infused into the film, and obviously everyone that was a part of it. So, I mean, that's a huge part of feature film, any filmmaking, but especially feature filmmaking, is that, you know, you're the cheerleader. It is your energy that is making things happen. And you know, it's ultimately has to be positive. Not everyone has, I guess, the pull of a Scott Rudin, where you could have been bullying and worse and come up with something great. You know, like if you don't have any money, any time, it has to be you know, the grace that you give that people respond to, and it's just fascinating. And so it's obviously a testament to all of you as people and artists. So congratulations for sure. And I think given that, so you've put something wonderful into the universe at this point, and luckily it's getting out there. You know, whether we're the first festival that you've played at or the 30th, we, as in the festival, want to see more of your work, and I know we're not alone. So what is next for all of you? Kaveh, why don't I start with you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm finishing a feature doc that I shot in Haiti about the way Haitians use ritual and ceremonies of transformation in order to find strength in the face of the challenges that they are dealt constantly. And so it's a collaborative film that I made with dancers and musicians and voodoo priests, and we all kind of wrote it together and did it together. And yeah, it's kind of like this poetic voyage through Haiti. And yeah, and then I'm writing a new feature. It's like a kind of a film noir about a celebrity fisherman who falls in love with a woman who only exists in his dreams, and he has to like cross the river Styx to get her out, and it all takes place in this shadowy Bangkok.
Wow, that seems like you know, that's a departure. It seems a little bit, huh?
I mean, it's all gonna be about vibes still, you know. It's all
Yeah.
gonna be about energy. Yeah.
A lot of music in the fisherman story as well. Or
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, the guy who's kind of the boatman between the dream world and the real world is going to be played by my dad, who is this like 80-year-old Iranian short man who plays the father in my film actually.
Oh
And,
yeah.
yeah, and I mean I cast him in the movie not really knowing if he'd be any good, and he was awesome, and he loves this kind of stuff, and he's just a crazy guy, and he's an amazing dancer. So there's all these like dance sequences, all this ballroom dance in this tango bar in Bangkok. It's hard to explain. It's gonna be a whole thing, but yeah, it's exciting.
I love that idea. And have you been to Haiti since the earthquake? The most
Oh
recent?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, since the most recent, I mean, no, I haven't been in like 2 years now, and right now it's not a good time to go. It's pretty messy down there,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still working. Like there's a narrator in the film. There's kind of a poetic narration. So I worked with this Haitian poet who's been doing all the writing and recording his voice. So I'm in contact with all my friends down there.
Wow. Yeah, those are two that please get to us. I think you have an audience for that here for sure.
Great.
Awesome. How about you, Melissa?
Yeah, I'm working on a few things. I'm producing actually a noir film that's shooting in Maine in the beginning of the year. So I'm gonna take on that role for a while and see what that feels like, that hat. And then I've written a script about a scientist in the Antarctica. It's kind of like High Life meets The Thing. So it's a little, it's a departure for me in terms of like writing, because I don't normally do like a thriller type things, but I do love horror movies. And so this would be my kind of environmental art house horror movie. And then I'm currently writing a story based on an incident from my childhood growing up in Moab, Utah, about some mountain climbers who go and try to collect a bunch of weed from a plane crash. So that's that. That's where I'm at. If anyone wants to give me money so I can pay for 6 people on my crew, that would be amazing.
Not a lot of money, people. Whoever's out there. And obviously, you're putting it in good hands. How about you?
Like,
what's that?
I'd like to think they're putting it in good hands.
Of course they are.
These hands right here.
Exactly. Look how much he did with nothing. One little village, 6 people, 4 characters, boom.
Exactly.
Exactly. How about you, Ezra? What's next?
Next is coffee, and then after that, we have a couple of scripts that we're just trying to figure out which one sort of gains momentum first. One, I guess you described as like a superhero satire, and the other we pitch as Get Out for Gay Conversion Camp. And then we're also torturing ourselves writing a feature that's sort of about 18th century photography and sort of people discovering double exposure and using that to sell like ghost photography or convince people that it was spirit photography.
I love it.
Yeah. That one's going to need a big budget. It's hard to shoot
that's
18th century New York on a shoestring, you know?
But no one can tell us no.
Yeah,
Only we can write it ourselves.
That's right.
Awesome. Again, very exciting projects. Brad, how about you?
Yeah, we're right now we're working on trying to get Grasshoppers out there more. Hopefully find distribution for it. And then in the background, I have a couple scripts. One's a feature, one's a miniseries, and one of them takes place in Chicago, and the other takes place at a sort of crystal gem show in Sedona, Arizona. And it's almost characters like after Grasshoppers, where if they had divorced, departed each other, and then they sort of meet at this gem show. And there's some magic. And then I wrote a children's book called Mom and Dad Live in Different Houses. That's a huge passion of mine.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Filmmakers, thank you for your talent, bravado, energy, and putting it out there and making these wonderful films and sharing it with us here at Ben Film, submitting to us first and foremost, and then sharing it with our audience. I've heard nothing but great feedback, and it's sure to come in over the next 6 days, I believe. Yeah. So we're still live till Sunday, and the awards show being Saturday at 6 p.m. So all films are obviously deserving, but I'll add a little bit of a nice bookend to the festival. So we'll be going all Sunday. So please see these movies, everyone out there. And if the filmmaker's contact information is in the film, don't hesitate to just reach out and tell everyone how much you've enjoyed their movie, because it does incredible things for filmmakers to hear that feedback from audiences. We love to say that we do it for the process. That keeps us going for the next one, but it does help always, at least in the back of my head, to have some cheerleaders behind us who really and to hear the appreciation of what we do as filmmakers. Everyone needs cheerleaders out there, so don't hesitate to reach out. Does anyone else want to say any?
Well, I mean, we'll just say thanks so much for having us. You know, we were really excited to be a part of Ben Film this year. Yeah, and hopefully we get to all meet somewhere behind some free Tito's vodka.
Yes.
We do Crater Lakes. It's home. It's distilled right here. Much better.
Oh, great, Crater Lake. Yeah, I mean,
Tito.
you feel free to ship some. It's fine. You know.
Good point. We will do that. Yeah, we have. So typically, see, this is the Selena. Do we have any here? In all of our swag bags, we have this is Ben Distillery Crater Lake Vodka, and they have these wonderful airplane bottles that typically find their way into everyone's swag bags.
Those would fit. Those would fit really nicely in my belly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could, there's some USPS flat rate shipping envelopes that these fit well into as well. So you have that to look forward to.
Excellent.
For the next Ben Film Festival. So if that doesn't give you incentive enough to blow $100,000 and a year of your life, right here. Yeah. So we want you all here in person. Long story short. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It was such a great conversation. I could do it all afternoon with y'all. And when you do make it to Ben, we will make it an afternoon, an evening, and a whole 4 days where we talk about the same stuff. Because hopefully it has been cathartic to sit here and hear from other filmmakers and being able to tell your own stories. It's forever fascinating and never gets old. So thank you once again. And everyone out there, please see these wonderful films.
Thank you, everybody.
So long, everybody. Thank you.